Story 1. The Empty Apartment Window. I moved into my first apartment in Chicago thinking it would be the start of something normal, until I noticed the light across the alley. It was supposed to be vacant. The building's facade was cracked and faded, the kind of place everyone avoided after dark. But every time I turned on my studio's single lamp, the curtain in the apartment directly across from me twitched, like someone had just glanced at me. At first, I convinced myself it was the wind, or my imagination. For the first few nights I ignored it. I'd make coffee, play music, and glance out the window occasionally. Each time the curtain would shift, a faint shadow pressing against the fabric. Chicago's nights were loud, filled with sirens and distant chatter, but this felt different, too deliberate, too aware. I asked my landlord about it. "That apartment's empty," he said, shrugging. "It's been for years. Nobody's lived there." I nodded, telling myself that was enough. But the next morning, something caught my eye. A small folded note slipped under my door. I picked it up, my hands trembling. On the yellowed paper, in messy, uneven handwriting, was a single word. "Hey." I froze. My landlord had just said the place was empty. Why would someone write to me? I called him over immediately. He followed me across the alley to the building, peering into the window. The apartment was empty, bare walls. The floor was dusty, littered with old newspapers. Nothing, except a folding chair, positioned squarely in front of the window, as though it had been placed there to watch me. "You see?" my landlord said. "Nothing here. Just a chair." But the chair unnerved me more than the note ever could. I couldn't stop staring at it from my own window. It felt alive somehow, like it was waiting. Over the next few days, my paranoia spiraled. I started keeping the blinds drawn, but the slightest flicker of movement in that empty window made my chest tighten. Sometimes I'd catch glimpses of the curtain twitching again, subtle and almost impossible to track. I told myself I was imagining it. Everyone tells themselves that, right before they realize they're not. One evening, around midnight, I heard it. A soft creak, like a chair shifting against the floorboards. My apartment was on the 4th floor. The alley below was empty. I froze. The creaking continued, rhythmic, measured. And then I realized it was coming from the other apartment. I tried reasoning with myself. Maybe someone had broken in. Maybe the building had squatters. Maybe I was losing my mind. I called my landlord again. He laughed nervously. "Check it all you want. That apartment is empty. Always has been." I couldn't sleep. Every sound, pipes, wind, distant footsteps, felt amplified, personal. I started leaving my light off, but even in darkness I felt its presence. Shadows seemed to linger at the edge of the window. Every so often I swore I saw the chair move a fraction closer to the glass, like it was leaning forward, straining to see me. Then came the night I found the second note. It was taped to my window from the outside. One word again, just beneath the streaked condensation. Watching. I didn't tell anyone. I couldn't. Friends would have laughed or called me crazy. I stopped leaving my apartment at night, stopped looking out across the alley. I tried to forget. But every evening, when the city went quiet, I felt it. The empty apartment window, staring, waiting. Last night I swear I saw a shadow sit in the chair, hunched, perfectly still. My blinds were drawn. My lights were off, and yet I felt it, watching, always watching. I haven't touched that window since, but sometimes when I lie awake, I swear I hear the faint creak of a folding chair against a dusty floor, just across the alley. Story 2. The Man by the Shed. I never should have followed Max into the woods that morning. He knew something I didn't, and by the time I realized it, it was too late to turn back. I was 12, living on the edge of a small town in rural Oregon, in a house my parents called quaint, but I thought of as lonely. Behind our backyard, dense pines pressed close, the kind that made shadows crawl even on sunny days. Max, our golden retriever, was normally the laziest dog imaginable, content with sunbathing on the porch. But lately, he refused to leave the patch of ground near the old shed at the forest's edge. He would growl low and guttural, hackles raised, and bark until his throat was raw. I started noticing the boot prints in the dirt, muddy, human-sized, leading only to the shed and stopping abruptly. At first, I thought it was some neighbor's kid or a wandering hunter, but it was too quiet out there. The woods held a kind of oppressive silence that made even birds hesitate. Max's barking changed when I watched him. Less playful, more warning, like he was trying to tell me something I didn't want to hear. One late afternoon, I was outside trying to ignore him. He tugged at his leash, pulling me closer to the shed. That's when I saw him. A man, hunched and ragged, wearing a dirty coat that hung off his shoulders like it hadn't been washed in years. He didn't notice me at first. He was just standing there, hands shoved deep into his pockets, staring at the ground. My heart thumped so hard I thought he'd hear it. Max barked, loud and furious, and the man turned slowly. His eyes were pale, almost gray, and they lingered on me like he was trying to remember me from somewhere. I froze, and then, just as quickly, he vanished into the trees. I ran inside, trying to make sense of it. My parents brushed it off when I told them, blaming imagination or a neighbor. But Max wouldn't stop growling at the shed, pacing in front of it, refusing his dinner. That night I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the floor, every whistle of wind through the pines made my skin crawl. Days passed. Max was becoming more restless. One morning I stepped outside and he was gone. Not in the yard, not in the woods, just gone. Panic set in immediately. I called his name until my throat hurt. I ran to the shed, hoping he'd been tied there or trapped. Nothing. Just the same boot prints leading into the trees, disappearing beyond the shed. Then I saw him again, the man. He was crouched near the shed, knife in hand, and my stomach dropped. He held Max's collar loosely between his fingers. The sight froze me. My dog was gone and this stranger had it. I couldn't move. He glanced at me for a moment, just long enough to see my fear, and then ducked into the forest. I waited, unsure if I should scream. But the woods were too dense and I knew if I ran after him I'd be lost. Finally, I forced myself to approach the shed. The door was old, wood swollen with rain, and it creaked ominously as I pushed it open. Inside, it was worse than I imagined. The air smelled of damp earth and something older, metallic, almost like blood, but faint. Symbols were scrawled on the walls, circles and lines I didn't recognize, some crossed with what looked like scratches made by nails or claws. Animal bones littered the corners, rabbits, birds, maybe even a raccoon. Some were gnawed clean, others shattered. I could feel my stomach turn, my hands trembling as I stepped deeper. Then I noticed a backpack tucked under a shelf. It was unzipped slightly, almost inviting me to look. Hesitating, I peeked inside. Strange drawings filled the notebooks, figures with elongated limbs, faces with hollow eyes, sketches of the shed itself. Beneath the drawings were things that made my heart drop. Small trinkets from our house, a watch that belonged to my mom, a keychain from my dad's truck, and Max's favorite chew toy. Whoever this man was, he had been in our lives long before that day. I slammed the shed door and ran back to the house, hands raw from gripping the handle, mind racing. My parents didn't want to hear it. They told me to stay calm, that it was probably some vagrant or collector. But I couldn't shake the way the symbols had burned into my retinas, or how Max's collar in the man's hands had felt like a message. He could take him any time. We started noticing other things. Windows left unlocked overnight, small scratches on the doors, and once the faint smell of smoke near the forest, even though nothing was burning. Every shadow seemed to linger longer than it should. Every night I woke expecting to hear Max scratching at my door, but he never came back. Eventually, my parents decided we had to move. I didn't argue. I didn't need proof anymore. The fear was enough. I packed my room in a daze, glancing constantly at the trees beyond our yard. Every footstep outside, every rustle in the pines made me flinch. On the last night, I snuck out one final time to look at the shed from a distance. It was quiet, deceptively quiet. The moon illuminated the clearing, and for a fleeting second, I thought I saw the outline of the man, standing perfectly still, as if waiting for me. Then he was gone. We left the next morning. I never saw Max again. The shed remained behind, slowly rotting, surrounded by the trees, the boot prints fading into mud and grass. But I still dream about that backpack, the drawings, and the hollow eyes staring back at me from the shadows. Sometimes, when I'm in a new town, I catch myself checking the woods near the edges of streets or empty lots, half expecting to see those same pale eyes watching from the trees. And deep down, I know Max isn't coming back. I just hope that wherever he is, he's safe, or at least that man isn't anywhere near him. Because if he is, I don't want to imagine what would happen next. The memory of that shed and the man who lurked by it follows me even now. And every time I hear a dog barking in the distance, my heart races, because I know it could be him, waiting, and I might be too late to stop him. I still think about that forest, the symbols, the backpack, and Max. And I know one thing for sure: some things are better left alone, even if you're only 12, even if your dog is trying to warn you. The shed in the woods is one of those things. And the man, he's still out there. Story 3. The Naked Man in the Woods. I never thought a weekend camping trip could turn into something I'd never stop replaying in my head, until I saw him. It was the summer of 2018 when Marcus and I, along with 4 other friends from college, decided to escape the city for a few days and camp in the Blue Ridge Mountains. We were a mix of majors and personalities, but all of us shared a love for the outdoors, late-night laughter, and a little harmless adventure. Our plan was simple: hike, swim in the creek, and spend the nights around a campfire, away from classes and screens. The first night passed without incident. The fire crackled, the smoke curled lazily into the cool night air, and our laughter bounced between the trees. Crickets hummed their chorus, and the occasional owl hoot punctuated the quiet. Everything felt normal, maybe too normal in hindsight. The second night, that sense of normalcy shattered. Marcus was the first to notice something wrong. We'd all gone to bed earlier than usual, exhausted from the day's hike, but he told me later he had stayed awake longer. He said he saw a shadow moving between the trees, a figure that didn't belong. At first he thought it might be a deer or some other animal, but the movement was too deliberate, too human. I didn't believe him at first. Shadows play tricks in the woods, especially at night. But then, in the morning, we all noticed the footprints. Human footprints, bare, muddy, encircling our campsite in a pattern that suggested someone had been pacing or watching us through the night. They weren't at the edge of the forest. They were right next to our tents. That night, unease settled over us like a fog. We tried to laugh it off, claiming it was probably another hiker, but the tension was palpable. We kept the fire burning longer, whispering in low tones, each of us listening for something that might not even be there. It was around midnight when things escalated. I had just unzipped my tent to grab my water bottle when I caught sight of him, naked, crouching behind a tree maybe 20 feet away. At first I thought I was imagining it, a trick of the firelight on the shadows. But Marcus saw him too. His skin glistened faintly in the firelight, his eyes reflecting a strange, unnatural focus. He didn't move, didn't make a sound, just watched. We froze, the air seemed to thicken. None of us could speak, our breaths shallow and rapid. Then, just as quietly as he appeared, he vanished into the blackness of the woods. Minutes or maybe hours passed in silence. Eventually, our rational minds convinced us to retreat into our tents and try to sleep. But sleep was impossible. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig made us flinch. And then we heard it. "I see you guys." The voice was low, raspy, almost a whisper carried by the wind, or so we hoped. It came from somewhere just beyond our firelight. My heart nearly stopped. My hands shook as I gripped the tent poles. My friends whispered frantically, debating whether to make a run for the ranger station or stay put. We were paralyzed by fear and disbelief. Then the zipper on one of the tents started moving. Slow, deliberate, like someone was testing it. Panic exploded. Screams mixed with orders, shouts of, "Get out! Get out now!" We grabbed our flashlights, shining them blindly into the dark, trying to locate him. He was gone again, just vanished. By some collective instinct, we ran. Through the woods, tripping over roots and rocks, calling each other's names. Only when we reached the ranger station, breathless and trembling, did we finally stop. Inside, an older ranger listened silently as we recounted the events. He didn't laugh or scold. Instead, he nodded gravely and told us something that still haunts me. There have been reports over the years of people living deep in the Blue Ridge forests. Not hermits, not lost hikers, but individuals who hunt in their own way. They follow campers, observe them, sometimes approach. Most leave before confrontation, some don't. We left the mountains that morning, broken in a way that no amount of reassurance could fix. None of us spoke much on the drive back. The laughter that had once bound us together felt fragile, a veneer over something raw and terrifying. Weeks later, I tried to rationalize what we saw. Maybe it was a drifter, mentally ill, hiding in the woods. Maybe the footprints were old, partially obscured, and our minds had connected them to the fear Marcus felt. But the voice, the zipper, those were too deliberate, too conscious. Something had been there, watching, enjoying the terror it caused. Even now, years later, I can't drive past the Blue Ridge without my chest tightening. I replay the sound of those words in my mind. I imagine him crouching behind a tree, waiting, and sometimes I wonder, did we really escape? Or did he just let us go this time? And that's the part that keeps me awake on some nights. The thought that he's still out there, somewhere in the shadows, waiting for the next group of campers who think they're alone. Because in those woods you never really are. I can still feel the damp earth under my hands when I tripped running through the trees. I can still see his pale skin glinting in the firelight, crouched and silent, just beyond reach. I can still hear the zipper, slow and deliberate, inching along the fabric of my tent. The thing is, it didn't matter that we screamed, that we ran. He had already made his presence known, and I don't think he ever forgot. Even today, I sometimes get messages from friends who have gone camping nearby. Stories that sound eerily familiar, snapshots of bare footprints, unexplained rustlings, whispers in the dark. And I can't help but warn them, though I know it's probably useless. If you ever hear someone say, "I see you," in the woods, don't wait. Don't investigate. Just leave, because whatever it isn't just a person. It's something that watches, waits, and knows exactly how terrified you can become. We never return to the Blue Ridge, none of us will. But sometimes, late at night, when the wind rattles my windows and the trees sway just right, I swear I can hear him laughing somewhere in the distance, low, guttural, and far too close. And it's a sound that will never leave me.